Hey, everybody. Welcome once again to A Million Little Podcast. I'm Kevin, and I'm here with your boy, Dave Miller from Chicago. What up, Dave?
What's going on, Kevin? Great to be here.
Man, it is, and Jaimie is not here. We don't start the rumor mill yet. She will have an announcement that she's going to drop in Dave style at the end of this show. With a voice memo, but explaining why she's not here, etc. But she'll get to it more a little bit. But this podcast might be a couple of bros for a little bit.
Yeah, times are changing, unfortunately. I've noticed as you become an adult, things just get worse in all aspects.
That's like largely why we decided to do this podcast in the first place, was we saw a show about a guy about our age who jumped off a fucking building, and we're like, I feel that. And then, so the three of us did this podcast. And now, Dave, you've been out with an injury the past couple weeks.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've had facial shingles, and not to say that like shingles on your torso is not painful, because I know it is. My mom had it and stuff, but I wouldn't wish facial shingles on my worst enemy. It's horrible.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure shingles anywhere is terrible, but I think that checks out, that the face would be, if we're ranking places to get them, that's got to be towards the end.
Well, it's horrible. It affects your everyday life. Like eating is still kind of a problem. It's better now.
Jesus.
And walking outside, the sensitivity to the cold, like wearing a scarf and stuff, it's pretty bad. But hopefully the worst is behind.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for coming back. And I've been out of town a little bit. And then Jaimie, as I said, she will explain her situation later. But that's why we're behind. That's why we fell, for the first time, we fell over a full week behind on this podcast. So apologies if you've been waiting on it, or if this feels outdated at this point. But you can binge it. You know how that works. Follow us at A Million Little Podcast on Instagram, A Million Podcast on Twitter. And and some people have tweeted at us very politely about that they're waiting on us to do it, but so we're happy to be back now, and we're at A Million Podcasts there. So yeah.
Well, it's weird because like some shows I watch, like I'll watch like The Unicorn on CBS and stuff, and they'll do like 4 straight new ones, 1 week off, and then new, and then you have other shows that are like 6 weeks off of reruns. So it's just weird. Like A Million Little Things, the show's been consistently new.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, usually we have a built-in rerun, and it helps us, like, catch up sometimes.
Yeah. Good news, Dave, along with, as you said, our discovery, our verdict that as you get further into adulthood, things just get worse. My entire industry, the way I make money, might be going away. As a stand-up comic, it's like with coronavirus stuff, there's things being canceled everywhere. Great news, I am scheduled to do a cruise ship the first week of April. So either that gets canceled or I'll just go and die, I guess.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah, you've done at least 2 cruise ships, correct, or more?
I did one in December, one in January. And, I mean, they suck for the most part. I mean, when you're in my position, you're just on the cruise ship alone. You do 2 shows, and they pay you very well, so that's nice. But, it's just like, it's just floating ships of murder now. So, anyway, great update. At least we have television to watch. But these are some of the reasons why we've been delayed. So, Dave, the lunch. That's the episode we're doing now, the lunch. Where do you want to start?
I mean, it's... I always feel like I start with Gary. The reason why I wanted to start with Gary was because of the opening scene. Gary on his computer, in his pajamas, freelancing. And I wanted to start there because, Kevin, you... like whether you're doing your own comedy writing, whether you were writing monologues for Letterman or doing various TV writing gigs, you did a lot of work from home. You still do. I do. So yeah. I just thought like that scene was cool. I thought it was cute how he had his Gary Mendez nameplate, and that's kind of what it is. Like he was in lounge pants with like his dress socks. That's kind of what it is for me. I don't know how it is for you, but that's kind of how it's great.
I did write, because I wrote that down. This is and Dave and I have in our text chain have various events in our life over the past couple of years have caused us to just type shout "We are Gary" at each other various times. And this is in this specific job way. We definitely are and have been. And I also wrote down, Dave, that because Gary, I think he's basically struggling to get his work done at home, and then he goes to a coffee shop. So I was going to ask you whether you were a more work at home dude, or a coffee shop dude, freelance wise. What's your move?
I'm a work from home guy. Now, I've had a lot of conversations with people. They're like, I can't get stuff done at home. No, I get stuff home great. Sometimes I'll wake up at 5 a.m., turn on the local news, and I'll get like my best work done until 7 or 8 a.m. Other times, if you happen to sleep in, then you just, make up for it later in the day. But I have no problem staying at home. I can stay in my apartment for 24 to 48 hours.
Dave and I share that. We have a definite homebody gene, for sure, where I can do that. I mean, so that's helped you with your survival with the shingles, I guess, being okay to just be home.
No, you are correct about that, because basically facial shingles it's herpes on your face, basically. So I didn't want to go anywhere.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, that's not. It's not the ideal going out vibe. Jaimie did give me her notes before she knew she would be unavailable, and she mentioned that there's we start with the close up on dirty socks for Gary. She wrote that Gary does not fuck right now. This Gary doesn't fuck. So that
is.
That is great. I think that's very accurate. And then when he's talking to Delilah on the phone to begin, and he says, you should think about going on the pill too because you're screwed. And Jaimie, as I was watching that with Jaimie, she just said, that joke sucks, Gary. So she wrote down that. Yeah.
I feel like in the last couple episodes, Gary's made jokes where they didn't land. I think that obviously that was, good writing, that trying to get that point across. He jokes all the time, but yeah. Mm-hmm. He's really corned it up a little bit lately.
He has corned it up a little bit. Also, it's weird. I mean, I guess here's the thing: 90% of jobs, I feel like, could just be freelance from home. But it is your job, your job as a writer, my job as a writer, or doing, podcast video stuff. All that stuff can obviously be from home. I guess Gary, as Jaimie wrote down, he has a freelance gig valuing dead people's lives for a living. Just talking to his dog, hanging out. It's a weird gig to do freelance from home, I guess. His insurance adjusting or whatever it is.
Yeah, he works I wrote down he works in insurance. That is something where I feel like they would just force you to go to the office.
Yeah.
Even though, again, you don't have to probably, but I just feel like that line of work, they just force you into 9 to 5.
Right, going through the motions. And basically, so Gary has trouble getting stuff done at home. He doesn't have the home fortitude, the home work ethic that you or I do. So he goes out to Delilah and Gina's restaurant. And this I wrote down. I understand this is it's a gimmick for the show to get everyone in the same place, but don't go to work where your friends are. That doesn't if you're going to do work, unless you literally work at the job with your friends, which cool, that's nice. I've done that. That can be fun. Don't go work where your friends are just doing their own shit. Also, this bleeds into Maggie's situation too. Who would set up a first date at your own friend's restaurant?
Horrible, yeah. And it's a restaurant where I don't know because it was during the day sort of, and yeah, I guess it could have been. I mean, maybe a Saturday, Gary working on a Saturday, but it was during the day, and it was just weird. It was it's a type of restaurant where it's semi fancy dinner. You could get some wine, but you don't just sit at a table and get a drink, on a first date, so it's just weird.
Right. Yeah, and I wrote down as a question, I guess this bleeds into Maggie's stuff a little bit. So, Dave, what is dating app-wise? Because I've never been on the apps. Jaimie and I have been around. We have been around as an item since 2002. So, do you have a best and worst dating app? Have you been a dating app guy? So, I mean, you've known me forever. Yeah. I love to meet people organically, so that is my go-to. But of course, being single, I have a couple of apps. I have Bumble and stuff. Of course, I think Tinder was one of the originators, so yeah. I have that. Tinder got really bad. That was just for hookups, and it was dirty. Whereas Bumble is more like Instagram, sort of. Gotcha. And women approach on Bumble.
Huh?
Women make the approach on Bumble.
Yeah, exactly. And also women make the approach on Bumble.
Yes.
But then, like, both got bad, and now I feel like Bumble's just like Instagram models. So both apps are sort of trash, but I would choose Bumble if I had to.
I would really enjoy it if you felt like Bumble's just Instagram models now, and that's just because Instagram models on Bumble can't get enough of Dave Miller. It's just nothing but Instagram models swiping right on Dave Miller.
That would be fantastic.
That would. Cool. So, and I wrote down that just joke-wise, Gary makes a Larry King divorce joke, which is a joke that's older than Sophie is, basically. It's like, I remember that being a go-to joke for Letterman in the 90s, like when I was watching when we were in high school. It's like, God dang, the person who wrote that line is way older than Gary is. That is an old man joke.
For sure. And also, I feel like in the last couple episodes, the bad jokes have been Gary's defense mechanism. So that's probably what they're doing. You know what I mean? They're having to do so many like corny jokes. It's like his defense mechanism to overshadow the fact that like he's still in love with Maggie.
Right, because he's feeling very vulnerable about that and thinking that Maggie just wants to be friends now. So yeah, any other Gary stuff to get into before we get into the Gary Maggie angle?
No, I just had Okay, so it's weird, we're like 2 episodes behind. This was the episode where he babysat for Sophie's brother and the kid, right? Or am I mixing up episodes in my mind?
I think mixing up episodes. That was not this one.
I wrote down Dad Gary ! And I thought of that.
I mean, just shouting Dad Gary is a great thing to do anytime.
Yeah, so I don't know what I was referencing in my notes, but I wrote down Dad Gary ! So he was acting like a dad, I guess. So
right.
That's all
Well, he was doing that a little bit here, too, because he was talking to Delilah when Delilah was trying to run how she's going to approach Sophie because she found a joint. And
that's what it was.
Yeah, we can transition into that. So basically, that's how the show opens up. He's talking to Delilah, and then she keeps the phone on as she talks to Sophie. And Sophie's pretty confident. She's like, Mom, I get it. I'm on birth control. And that was not what she was thinking was happening. But
yeah, that's not, and that's another mystery thing that we didn't find out about in this episode at the end, you know?
Yeah. Jaimie wrote down in her notes, is she 16? She said, birth control, is she 16? Damn girl. That's what she wrote down. She so she ends up talking to Delilah about that fairly confidently, which it's like good for her, good for getting on birth control early, and she explains later in the episode that part of why she did is because she saw what happened when her mom did not do birth control. But I guess just the tricky part of this conversation is just like by virtue of talking about birth control, you're talking about sex with your parents, basically. Did you ever get the talk, Dave?
This was on my mind as soon as you started talking.
Yeah.
I never got the talk because it wasn't necessary. Like for you, it wasn't necessary. And like we grew up where it was like kind of pre-internet. Like the AOL existed, dial-up and stuff, but it was just like.
Yeah.
No, like I just didn't get the talk. It just like wasn't necessary.
Also,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Also, you had a bunch of older siblings, so I feel like a parent probably figures like, well, it's trickled down a little bit that way. I was the oldest. I forget if I've mentioned this on this podcast or just on the Sex and the City It's podcast I do with our friend John Daly. But my mom went to give me the talk in 8th grade. And I just felt so awkward about it. I just pretended I was asleep, and she just kept talking. And then eventually she left, and that was it. We never gave it another try. But yeah, my mom's like, "You're on the basketball team. I understand that you're going to be flirting with cheerleaders and stuff, And yeah, my mom was pretty cool about it. She's like, "If you need me to buy things for you, let me know."
That's outstanding.
Yeah. But she did, but I did not ask her to buy it because I never, because I think Dave and I are both the kinds of, or were both the kinds of high school kids. I'm not telling my mom, can you go buy condoms for me? That's not something I'm going to say. Did I attempt to steal condoms from Walgreens and get caught? Yes. And is that story in the set I did on the David Letterman show? It is. So it all worked out fine. But, Sophie.
Did that make your album? I forget.
It is. Yeah, it's on the Nice and Drunk album too. Seamlessly plugged right in there. But I think it's called, and it's on Spotify, just called My Criminal Record, I think. So basically Sophie, Gary's not fucking. Sophie maybe fucks. At this point, she's with, what's the dude's name? Jake?
Jake, yeah.
Yeah. So she's trying to hang out with him. It seems like it's trending towards sexy time for those two.
Mm. And then so Sophie changes like her shift.
Right.
Jake calls off, and they think that everyone thinks that it's an afternoon soiree.
Yes. But then it's like they start treating it basically like she's been kidnapped, where they like look up Jake's address and go to the place. It's like, she just was telling you she's on birth control. She's being kind of extremely responsible in this situation. This is not a kidnapping. These are people who are dating. They are hanging out together. You don't have to freak like that. I wrote down Jake has corona. They think he's faking sick, but they get there and it turns out, no, he's not.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Yeah, Jaimie wrote down that Sophie got that he's that the guy Jake is a nice, responsible bum. Basically, when Delilah shows up to the place to try to interrupt the sexy time, and then finds out that literally the guy's just sick, she ends up talking to Sophie, and Sophie says that Jake dropped the "I love you" bomb already.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of strange. I mean, just like 2 weeks ago, they were making out in the kitchen. I don't know. I thought that was kind of strange to be so heavy with the "I love you."
Oh yeah, I wrote that's a quick "I love you," my man. That is, he's really getting in there fast. What's the quickest what's the quickest you've ever gone to the "I love you" drop?
It was after a month. She said it first. I mean, yes, a month is quick. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But, if she says it first, whatever. I guess, you're feeling it. I was like 25, I guess, so you're feeling it, Yeah.
My brother Joe, he initiated the "I love you" 3 weeks in, and they're married. So that's so that worked. I think my quickest was definitely like 6 months, I think, which may be as long. I mean, I also just haven't dropped it otherwise. But this is a quick one on Jake's behalf. But yeah, they seem. Then that leads to Sophie basically talking to Jake or talking to Delilah about whether she loved Eddie. And I thought that was a relatively well handled conversation.
It was, yeah. I'm surprised that Sophie asked the question, but it was good,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess. Right, I guess they have some distance from it now, so it's they can be a little more level-headed about stuff. And she basically said, "Yeah." Delilah was like, "Yeah, I loved Eddie, but we were just both lost. It started as friendship, and even though they loved each other, it was still a mistake. Even though it's still a mistake, even if it led to Charlie, who they don't regret. It's complicated shit. But I thought that the show, I thought the show handles that kind of nuanced, complicated stuff pretty well.
Absolutely.
So, also I wrote down, it was funny that Delilah saying to Sophie, "Let's promise that neither one of us has sex for 24 hours." That's a promise that for a lot of us, not that hard to make or keep, but the Dixon gals are really getting after it. So that, I guess that is a sacrifice. All right. So shall we bounce over to Maggie?
Sure.
Any other Delilah Sophie stuff in there?
No, the last note was the heart-to-heart they have. I thought that was we talked about that. I thought that was a good scene, and glad that things are pretty good on the home front until the next disaster. Oh, well, we don't. The whole pot thing wasn't handled, correct?
Yeah, that's true. They never really addressed the weed stuff.
Yeah, so
Uh,
we'll see.
Yeah, Jaimie did write. She noted that the paging Dr. Jello code red. She just wrote, "Yuck! I hate this quote. Fun." these are two not funny people for sure. And then Delilah said, "Jake's 18. He must be quote experienced." And Jaimie wrote, "You know, even if he's had sex, he's not experienced." At 18, that is I feel like that's a very Delilah being French perspective. She's like, 18, he's been having sex for 5 years already. You know, it's like, no.
Yeah, it's like that's how they do it in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So, yeah, let's take me to Maggie stuff, Dave.
Yeah, so Matt, I always make a point of who narrates at the beginning, the flashback stuff. Maggie narrated, so you kind of knew that she would be prevalent in this episode. And yeah, we see her getting ready for, basically her first date. If you take Eric out of the equation, she's trying on all these dresses and stuff in her apartment. And
she gets a friggin' Lizzo good as hell montage that lasts.
Oh, that's right, it was Lizzo, yeah.
Lasts like 10 seconds. They had to drop some cash on that music. It's like that's a fairly high profile song, relatively recent for this show, to drop in there.
Sure, and I know it's an ABC thing, but like to get Kimmel, I feel like this show has a humongous budget. I know. And all the guest stars.
Right. I noticed Kimmel in the credits early on. I was like, oh, that's weird. But we did not see him, right? Or did we?
He was the voice talking to Isaac Martin on the phone.
Right. That's what I thought. But we didn't see him otherwise, right?
No, we didn't see him. But yeah, so she's getting ready for her date, goes to the restaurant. Again, we touched on this. I don't like when you went on dates. I just didn't want like my friends around.
No.
I mean, it's dumb.
Oh man, I can hardly think of anything worse. That you don't want to be distracted for one thing. I understand. I think women, for understandably, are more frequently will like tell a friend they're going on a date in case they need to, for safety, or just to like have someone to contact to like get them out of it. But yeah, whenever I've been like anytime I was on a relatively early on date, certainly a first date, it's like, no, I want to go somewhere where I'll see literally no one I've ever met. I'd prefer to just drive 45 minutes out of town. Let's just get the fuck,
Especially if something embarrassing happens, like, and you're embarrassed.
Oh, I'm gonna blow it. Yeah, you feel, you absolutely feel that way. But yeah, Maggie goes to like where literally all of her friends are for the first date, which again, get it from a TV gimmick standpoint, but like, yeah, don't do this in real life for sure. Yeah. And then, as Jaimie and I were both kind of saying this, it's like Gary's at the restaurant when Maggie gets there for her blind date. This does like Gary's just setting up at this fancy restaurant like it's a Starbucks. Like that's not a move in this kind of restaurant. It doesn't seem like.
No, and that's the thing. Like, if you ever, like, I went on job interviews to, like, be a bartender or something, and you see the owner in the corner on his computer. The only people that sit at a restaurant with their computer is, like, the owner or maybe a businessman waiting for a flight,
yes,
to go to the airport.
Totally. Yeah, that's a good call. That is a very, like, job interview at a restaurant vibe. So, yeah, he's just hanging out, and, yeah, She's waiting for this Larry character who's just straight up ghosting before the first date, which I just don't understand at this point, because in this point of like in like human history, technology wise, because she can contact you and it's relatively easy for you to contact and bail out. Like back in the day, you could ghost and really ghost more, But yeah. I just don't know why you would. Yeah, I'm sure this still happens that people stand people up. But have you ever been stood up or stood up on a first date? Or ever, I guess.
No, the only thing that's happened was, maybe 6 hours before the person was like, oh, I have a lot of work to do. It's going to be a long day at the office type thing. So, that's
a cancel.
That day, a cancellation.
Yeah. day of cancellation, that happens. That's fine. Okay, what else we got for Maggie there? So
So I was going to say, you mentioned she does get stood up. We see who we find out is Derek, the abusive ex. I think a lot of viewers probably thought that maybe Derek was the date and like Maggie didn't see him. At least that's what I thought initially.
Oh, good call. Yeah, that's
what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Because when he walks in and he kind of talks to the host and like looks around. Of course, that's not who the date was. She gets stood up, and then Gary feels bad and has a bottle of wine delivered to her, but he wants Gina to not make it known that it's from him.
Right.
Maybe deep down Maggie thinks it's Gary, but yeah, as of now we think that, Delilah.
Yeah, and before that, Gary and Maggie are talking a little bit. Gary's hovering, and Maggie's like, "Why are you still here? I asked you to leave an hour ago." And he says, "No, you didn't. I asked if you wanted me to leave, and you didn't tell me to." And then she said, "The last person I want to be humiliated in front of is you," which that I get. Like, being seen, being stood up in front of your most recent ex, that's nightmare.
The worst.
So that's terrible. And then, then clearly it's like Gary had the wine sent over. Gina picks up on it, as you said, and sort of takes credit for it. And then Maggie says to Gina, "Silly part of me wish this wine had been from Gary." And Jaimie appropriately, in her notes, wrote, "OMG, just fall back in love already." Which seems like that's where we're headed toward as the season moves on here.
Hopefully. And I wrote down the quote from Gary telling Regina, "I can't put myself out there again, not with her," saying like he admits to Gina that he loves her still, but he can't put himself out there again.
Right. I guess in this situation, she made it clear that she at least said that she wants to be friends. So I think he feels like he's in a position where if it's going to go somewhere else, she has to initiate that.
For sure. Yep. And he technically, I guess, was the breaker-upper. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So that's I think what we got on Gary and Mags. So who do we want to do, Dave? We want to do the Rome, Gina, Eve storyline or the little Eddie and Dakota situation?
Well, I just despise Dakota now. Do you want to just get it over with?
Yeah, let's get it over with. Get Dakota over with for me. Bury Dakota.
It's just awful. We see Dakota and Eddie in the studio. That's fine. She's a good artist and stuff. Trevor, the recording agency guy, comes in. Who Jaimie
noted he's like the D-bag in every Hallmark movie. Jaimie said, which that checks out.
For sure. He says he doesn't have time to listen right now. Finally, does listen and gives them some notes. She freaks out because she's very green and sort of amateur. She doesn't take constructive criticism well. Eddie tells her that no, this is how it is. You're making an album for the studio, not just yourself. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, she gets on board with what Eddie's saying, but she's just not a likable character.
Yeah, she's got a lot of attitude that's unearned, kind of, and it's not just the label guy that she's treating like a dick. She's treating Eddie like a dick. She's not listening to anything he's saying. She's sort of steamrolling him. Here's the thing. I get it. You're a musician. You're an artist of any kind. The whole reason you got into that is to do the thing that you want to do, to express your shit in the way that you want it. But once you start cashing the checks from someone else is involved now. And they get a say because that's what their job is. And that sucks. And you can definitely tell, I've worked on several TV shows where you get notes. The notes are idiotic. But part of the art of that is you have to sort of make the people giving the notes feel like they're being considered. And then you kind of have to trick them into thinking your good ideas are partially their good ideas for them to greenlight it. So it's a stupid fucking dance, but this is capitalism. This is just where the money comes from. And once you sign on to accept money, you have to listen to them. Otherwise, you can go back to YouTube and keep making stuff exactly on your own and not listening to anybody. That's another option. But Dakota, you want that money,
For sure. And Kevin, we're on the other side of 35. I'm selling out at this point.
Oh, of course I'm selling out. Also, please pay us for anything. No doubt, dude. It's like the first order of business is surviving, and then, we'll get back to art. But you have to be able to survive. I did my stand-up album, which is a little different, because also the label I worked with, 800 Pound Gorilla, is great, and they were very much like, it's your album, it's your edit. Basically, they were just into putting out the album, and they said I could edit it whatever way I wanted, and their only suggestion was that they strongly suggested I release a clean version of my album for Sirius XM play, so it could get play on the clean channels, and they said it would make a lot more money that way. Turns out they were correct, but my Dakota stubborn artist thing was like, no, I don't want to do a full clean album. If you're buying the album, I want each of these bits to be exactly how I actually say them, which sometimes there's a fuck in there, and so if you buy my album, it is normal the way I want it, so they put it out like that, but they also let me do a clean edit for the radio. So it's like, that's just an example of, you just got to work with the people you're talking to. Although, especially in the TV world, a lot of the notes are incredibly stupid that you get, like, make this breathier. That makes sense. I'm sure the A Million Little Things people have gotten notes that level of dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did enjoy when Dakota was like, my real name's not Dakota. No shit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then the other thing was, she calls him a washed-up yes man. It's like, okay, then go back to YouTube and be your YouTube star. I mean, just, the gall of her to, have the attitude.
Oh, yeah, and you're just a washed-up yes man who will do anything to stay relevant, Jaimie said, is just a lamer version of you're just a virgin who can't drive. Clueless reference. Yeah. And Eddie, I think Eddie basically explains what we were talking about well there, where he's like, this album isn't just yours. It's a collaborative process now. Yeah. And Dakota's real name is Christine. Yeah. That's that. Yeah, I think that's that. And then I guess there's a note here that talented people leave their hometowns because wanting different things and everything else is often treated like a bad thing, depending on where you grew up. So, I mean, that's about that, right? Anything else with Dakota, Eddie?
No, we covered it. So she ultimately gets on board, and the idea is going into the next episode to make an album, and then she can sort of do what she wants to do after that.
Put out your thing, raise your profile, and then you have more leverage and more freedom next time. It's boring, but that's like how the business works. Yeah. All right. So that's that. We've got that. Oh, also just the music that Dakota is putting out, I wrote, is giving me very mid-2000s network TV vibes. It's like very 2006 network TV music, I feel like.
Yeah, like early years Grey's Anatomy type.
Totally. Yeah, it's an early Grey's vibe, for sure. Yeah. Just sort of like generic, like, love is good, believe in yourself, dreams, with like a soft beat. All right, cool. So, Dave, lead us into the closing kick, which is Rome, Gina, Eve, etc.
Yeah, so obviously Eve is working at the restaurant, not the diner anymore, to sort of, so that guy, what's his name, Derek, doesn't find her. So she's in a new place, so Derek doesn't find her hypothetically. Well, we find out that Derek does show up at the restaurant.
Yeah, that's the reveal at the end there. Yeah,
that's the reveal at the end. Well, so it's Rome and his dad, kind of, discussing. What are they? They're discussing movies, and this guy sort of interrupts and is laughing along with them, and we find out that is the ex. Derek is the ex. And the first thing that came into my mind was, oh, wow, this is going to be multi-layered, because if we go back a few episodes, Gina's mom kind of got upset how, they were, recruiting, or they wanted to adopt a black baby, whereas Gina's mom thought it was going to be white. Well, obviously Gina's mom and Gina came together, and Gina's mom realized the whole racial stuff. But now with Derek being a white guy, that complicates matters even more. So we have this abusive guy who's, you know, a threat to Eve, but we also have now a baby who's going to be biracial. You know, that's the first thing I thought of.
That's a good, yeah, I hadn't considered that angle of it, but that was a very specific reason why they picked Eve, was because they wanted a baby who looked like it came specifically from them. You know, and yeah, that's true. That is an added wrinkle, and I guess it is funny that, like, I wonder if they'll go there really, but the weird sort of possible assumed bias that they just would assume that the father of her child would not be a white guy, you know, because I don't remember them ever asking a question. And you're right, they made the race of the kid that was a factor in their decision to start with. So that, yeah, you're right. That is an interesting wrinkle.
And we see towards the end of the episode his aggressive behavior, like basically almost walking into the kitchen area, not the kitchen, but like walking into the little hallway.
Oh, Dave, he's in a trance.
Yeah, he's in a trance. He's like, I think he grabs her by the arm and like walks her out.
Yeah, he's a psychopath. And then you see that she's basically trying to play it like maybe she can sort of trick him into signing the papers. But, you know, Rome and Gina are kind of panicking as they're discovering what's going on, being like, we can get you away from him. We can call the cops, get you safe. And she's like, no, they'll just make him hold on forever. Now he knows that this baby's a reality.
Yeah, so I wrote down, you know, disastrous ending. So the ending, you know, it's a disaster. We don't know. As of right now, it just doesn't look like Regina and Rome will get the baby. We'll obviously find out, but it's just a disaster. The whole thing's a disaster. We have Eve, whose life is sort of in danger. We have Rome and Gina, the baby situation in danger. Yeah, so the whole, just a lot of bad at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Jaimie also noted, weird guy creep at the bar creeping for no reason. Oops, it's Derek, and he's white, with a lot of eyes there.
And again, it feels like it's like 2 p.m.
It does. Yeah, the light, it's still afternoon out. Yeah, they've had quite a morning.
For sure.
Yeah. So, all right, does that covers us on Derek Eve stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, obviously, next week. Something's got to come to boil because this guy's in her life now.
Yeah, and Jaimie noted, where's Punchy Gary when you need him? Would be fun to have Gary just show up and beat the shit out of Derek. You know, just knock this guy out. Rome, Jaimie and I have had very similar feelings on this. Rome's dad is a big fucking baby, and it ends nicely in this episode, but Jaimie put it well when she said this guy's 1,000 years old and should be embarrassed for being such a cranky child all the time. His dad sucks. He sucked for a long time. It sucks if he's depressed, but man, he's been a real whiny, annoying, selfish baby as long as we've known him in this show.
For sure. I agree. That's the other thing. Like, there's no need to even get into it. He's just been a bad character in the first 2 seasons. I like the ending, though. Mm-hmm. It's Rome realizing his dad's going through his own stuff, so that's good. Mm-hmm. So he's been a bad character thus far, but I like how they handled it at the end.
Yeah, and Rome's dealing with Isaac Martin is the character name, right?
Yeah.
So that guy shows up who Rome might be making a movie with, and Isaac would be producing it to sort of get a producer's credit. He's a big movie star, and he's swinging in for a quick meeting with Rome, and he's acting real famous, coming in the restaurant. He's getting photos taken everywhere, and he sits down, and he keeps getting pulled away, and then eventually, through what he says to Rome realizes that, oh man, my dad's depressed. So then he bails on the meeting, and you know, even when that happens, even when Isaac is acting like, hey man, I gotta leave after this, stay here, you know it's gonna come around and that's actually gonna be okay, and Isaac's gonna like it. But in my mind, I'm like, man, your he's not jumping off a bridge right now, you gotta take this meeting.
Oh, 100%, yeah, you know, call the dad in a half an hour and apologize or something, but yeah, to walk out was ballsy.
It reminds me of, you know the movie Elf?
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I have not.
Not seen Elf, Dave. We got this Christmas. We're getting tanked and watching Elf in the suburbs.
I haven't even seen Die Hard. There's people that get mad at me. I haven't seen like any movie.
Oh yeah, people. Yeah, people. That makes sense. That would be a thing people get mad at you about. I've never eaten pie in my life. People get furious when they hear that. But in Elf, James Caan at some point, like his kid walks in and he bails on a meeting, and I'm like, it's nice in the movie, and the guy's an asshole, but it's sort of the same vibe where I'm like, you could still finish your job. You actually could both finish your job and hang out with your kid or your dad here, but it's all right. It ends up nice. And
I'm glad they put a bow on that, and hopefully we don't deal with the dad until season 3.
Yeah, finish the damn meeting. But the dad had a nice little talk with Maggie and kind of admitted, they have chowder and he spills his guts to her and is like, I know I'm not fun to be around right now, and as Jaimie wrote, or ever. But it ends up Isaac is impressed that Rome sort of, had his family priorities, quote unquote, straight. So they it seems like their movie stuff is moving forward. And I didn't realize, I guess this was shown in a previous episode, but I didn't realize Eve was actually working at the restaurant. But I guess she is.
Yeah, she is. Obviously it gives her an income and it gets her away from the diner she worked at.
Yeah, and then just to another restaurant where Derek shows up at. So perfect. No Danny this episode. Maybe that's why Jaimie is gone. It's hard to tell, but it seems like we're at least getting some Theo stuff next week. Dave, any thoughts to toss in before we wrap this one up?
No, I think we covered everything. If I remember correctly in the scenes, Eddie's sister is arriving next week, and obviously we have Derek's stuff to deal with, and then what else? Oh, Gary, a potential woman in his life that he meets. It could be Eddie's sister. We just see Gary getting a number from some lady. I don't know if it's Eddie's sister, but some random lady gives him the number.
Right, from a Becky. Yeah, I could not tell what was going on in that preview, but yeah. We'll see that next week, which has, as we're saying this, that's already aired. Many of you guys listening to this have probably already seen that. We'll get that episode up as quickly as we can. Hopefully, as you know, with my travels, Dave's shingles, Jaimie's situation, which we'll throw to right now, her talking to you guys. It has been extremely difficult to keep ourselves on schedule, but we will hopefully we will get this next one out more quickly this time, and we'll be caught up soon. But thanks for listening, everybody. Follow us at A Million Podcast on Twitter, at A Million Little Podcast on Instagram. And here's Jaimie before we say a million little bye.
So here's the deal, guys. I have a very important case that I have to work on in the Grand Canyon. No, but can you imagine if I tried to pull that on y'all? Can you see how dumb it is that they thought Theo wouldn't know? Such an obvious lie. No, I wish I had an exciting story, like I was quarantined on a cruise ship or something, but my schedule right now is just kind of gumming up the works, and I am not as available as I need to be getting episodes out on time, so I'm just gonna not do it for a little bit, and then if I'm able to in the future, I will come back. And I don't like it. It feels like a real wiener move on my part, so Eddie's off the hook for a while. Jaimie's wiener of the week for the foreseeable future. But Dave and Kevin are awesome and funny, and you will have lots of fun with them. And I mean, what do I do anyway? Just like, bonjour, I am Delala, and Danny rules and everyone else rules. So copy, paste, put that in whatever episode you want, and you won't even miss me. It's not even a big deal. But it is a big deal because I do have a lot of fun doing this, and I will miss it for the time that I'm not doing it, and I'll miss chatting with Dave. Kevin's pretty cool also. But I'll still be watching the show, and I'll give Kevin my notes in case they want to know my thoughts. This is going great, you guys. I'm really, really good at podcasting. Okay, anyway, so maybe I'll see you later. Maybe I won't. Have fun. A million little bye.